What if I told you that a story like this could happen anywhere? In a university, in a quiet house, or even in the place you feel safest. Crimes don't always need a reason, and darkness doesn't need a place to hide. It can begin in a quiet classroom, in a crowded street, or even right next to you without you ever realizing what's unfolding. Sometimes, the most dangerous moments don't announce themselves. They look completely ordinary at first. Tonight's story is not about where it happened, but about how easily something like this could happen anywhere, to anyone. And once it begins, there is no way to tell who is the victim and who is the one hiding the truth. Welcome to Case Number channel. Tonight, we uncover a mystery that began as a simple classroom exercise and ended in murder. In a small, quiet town stood an old and isolated university, known as the Night College, an institution surrounded by silence, fading history, and corridors that seemed to grow colder after sunset. Inside this university, renowned criminology professor Richard Bennett taught his students how criminals think, how patterns of crime are formed, and how even the most complex cases are eventually solved through logic and observation. But one day, he introduced something unusual, something that changed the atmosphere of the entire classroom. Imagine committing a murder that no one could solve, he said calmly. Now write your plan in detail, every step, every method, every way you would avoid detection. For a moment, the room fell completely silent, because within just a few days, the line between theory and reality began to disappear. What started as a simple classroom exercise turned into something far more terrifying. A real murder shocked the entire Night College. The same place that once taught how to understand criminals was now the center of an unsolved crime. And suddenly, every student became a suspect. Who was the killer? And how did an academic assignment turn into a deadly reality? Stay until the end to uncover every clue, every hidden secret, every suspect, and the shocking truth behind the murder. This is The Murder at Night College. Murder number 1. On October 17th, at exactly 9:45 p.m., the impossible finally became reality. 3 days after Professor Richard Bennett gave his students the assignment to design the perfect unsolvable murder, Night College was shaken by a tragedy no one saw coming. University security guard Thomas Reed was making his routine rounds through the nearly deserted campus. The hallways were silent. Most students had already returned to their dorms, and the old university seemed unusually quiet. As Thomas approached the library, something immediately felt wrong. The main doors were closed. The lights inside were still on. Yet the building felt strangely lifeless. Moments later, he made a horrifying discovery. Inside the library, among rows of books and empty study tables, lay the body of 21-year-old student Daniel Brooks. Within minutes, police officers and investigators flooded the scene. Fear spread across the campus. Students gathered outside as flashing blue and red lights illuminated the darkness. But what investigators discovered next made the case even more disturbing. Every door to the library had been locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no damaged locks, and perhaps most unsettling of all, there were no signs of a struggle. It was as if whatever had happened inside the library had occurred without anyone hearing a sound. Detectives began searching for answers. Their first theory was simple. The killer must have already been inside the building before the crime took place. But the mystery only deepened when investigators began interviewing Daniel's friends. Several of them revealed something chilling. Just hours before his death, Daniel had seemed nervous and distracted. According to one witness, he quietly said, "I've discovered something that could destroy certain people's lives." He never explained what he had found. He never revealed who was involved. And before he had the chance to tell anyone more, he was dead. Now investigators faced a terrifying question. What exactly had Daniel discovered? And was that secret the reason he was murdered? The answers were hidden somewhere within Night College, and someone was determined to keep them buried. As investigators carefully reconstructed the final hours of Daniel Brooks' life, one detail immediately captured their attention. Witness statements, security records, and timelines all pointed to the same conclusion. The last person known to have spoken with Daniel before his death was Professor Richard Bennett. At first, it seemed like a minor detail. After all, Bennett was Daniel's professor, and conversations between students and faculty were common. But in a murder investigation, even the smallest detail can change everything. Within days, investigators turned their focus toward the respected criminology professor. The man who had spent years teaching students how crimes were committed and how criminals were caught was now facing questions of his own. Meanwhile, news of the murder spread rapidly throughout the town. What began as a local tragedy quickly became the biggest story in the region. Television stations interrupted their regular programming. Newspapers printed headlines about the mysterious death at Knight College. Online discussions exploded with theories and accusations. As public interest grew, facts slowly gave way to speculation. Rumors spread faster than evidence. People began drawing conclusions before the investigation had even reached its first breakthrough. And before long, the media had already found its prime suspect, Professor Richard Bennett. To the public, he was no longer a respected educator or a renowned criminology expert. He was becoming the face of the investigation. Day after day, reporters questioned his involvement. News broadcasts replayed his photograph. Headlines linked his name to the murder. The pressure continued to grow. But Richard Bennett knew something the investigators did not. The more he examined the evidence, the less sense it made. Certain clues appeared almost too convenient. Certain circumstances seemed too perfectly arranged. It was as if someone wanted investigators to reach a specific conclusion. The deeper he thought about it, the more convinced he became. This was not a coincidence. Someone was manipulating the investigation. Someone was carefully placing suspicion exactly where they wanted it. Someone was trying to frame him. And if Richard Bennett was right, then the investigation was heading in the wrong direction. Because the real killer had not been caught. The real killer was still free, still watching, and possibly preparing for what would happen next. One week after the death of Daniel Brooks, fear had taken over Knight College. Students avoided empty hallways. Evening classes ended early. No one felt safe anymore. Just as the university was beginning to recover, another tragedy struck. On October 18th, at 10:20 p.m., a second student was found murdered. This time, the victim was Emily Carter. Emily was known for being observant and intelligent. While others tried to move on, she had been quietly looking into Daniel's death. And then she discovered something important. At 10:21 p.m., only minutes before her death, Emily sent a text message to her closest friend. The message contained just one sentence. "I know who the killer is, but there was one terrifying problem. She never revealed the name." At 10:48 p.m., Emily's body was discovered behind the old science building. Her notes were missing. Her evidence had vanished, and whatever secret she uncovered died with her. Now, two people connected to the mystery were gone. Two potential witnesses had been silenced. As investigators reviewed the case, a chilling realization began to emerge. This wasn't a random murderer. Whoever the killer was, they seemed to know every move the investigators made, and for the first time, police feared a horrifying truth. The killer was always one step ahead. The respected criminology professor no longer believed the official investigation was following the right path. Late one night, while reviewing old university records in his office, Bennett discovered something unusual. Both murder victims, Daniel Brooks and Emily Carter, shared a connection that investigators had overlooked. Months before their deaths, they had belonged to a small research group at Knight College. The group had been studying a forgotten incident buried deep within the university's history, a case that few people even remembered. On November 12, 2014, at 2:13 a.m., a fire had broken out inside one of the campus dormitories. The blaze spread rapidly through the building. When firefighters finally extinguished the flames, one student was found dead. Authorities quickly ruled the tragedy an accident, and the case was closed. But as Professor Bennett examined the old files, disturbing questions began to emerge. Why had Daniel and Emily been investigating a 5-year-old fire? And what had they discovered before they were killed? A chilling possibility soon became impossible to ignore. If the dormitory fire had not been an accident, then Daniel and Emily may have uncovered a secret someone was willing to kill to keep buried. And the murders at Knight College were only the beginning. Unable to ignore the growing connection between the murders and the old dormitory fire, Professor Richard Bennett decided to reopen the case himself. In secret, late at night, he entered the restricted archives of Knight College. Surveillance cameras showed him reviewing sealed files at 12:40 a.m., carefully going through every report, witness statement, and evidence log from 5 years earlier. What he found changed everything. The dormitory fire of November 12, 2014, at 2:13 a.m. had never been an accident. It had been deliberately set. But the investigation at the time had failed to identify the person responsible. As Bennett continued digging deeper into forgotten records and archived student files, one name began appearing repeatedly: Arman Hayes. 5 years earlier, Arman Hayes had been one of Knight College's most promising students. Brilliant, focused, highly respected by both faculty and peers. But behind his achievements, there were inconsistencies, missing reports, unexplained absences, and connections to the dormitory building long before the fire. The more Bennett uncovered, the more disturbing the pattern became. At 1:18 a.m., he closed the final file in silence. And by then, one truth had become impossible to ignore. If Arman Hayes was truly involved, then the fire was not just an accident buried in the past. It was the beginning of everything that was still happening now. October 24th, 2019, at 9:10 p.m. Before Professor Richard Bennett could reveal what he had uncovered, another student suddenly vanished: Ethan Parker. On October 22nd, at 6:30 p.m., Ethan was last seen leaving the campus library. After that, there was no trace of him. 2 days later, at 9:10 p.m. on October 24th, investigators made a horrifying discovery inside a forgotten warehouse on university property. Ethan Parker's body was found concealed in the dark storage room. But what shocked them most was not just the murder. It was the message left beside him, written in cold, deliberate ink. The truth must remain buried. Silence followed the discovery. The warning was clear. This was no longer just a series of murders. The killer was no longer hiding. They were sending a message, and everyone at Knight College was being watched. Professor Richard Bennett finally uncovered the truth behind the Knight College murders. All evidence pointed to one man, Arman Hayes, a former student tied to a past dormitory fire that had killed his close friend and was quietly ruled an accident. When new students began investigating that buried case, Arman panicked and started eliminating anyone who got too close to the truth. The following night at 11:20 p.m., Richard brought Arman to the old university hall where police were waiting. Confronted with evidence, Arman broke down and confessed that he had tried to hide the past, not intending for anyone to die. He was immediately arrested. The old fire case was reopened, and the victims were finally cleared. As Richard left the campus, he reflected that some secrets become more dangerous the longer they stay buried. Now the mystery has been solved, but one question still remains. Why did Arman Hayes start the dormitory fire 5 years ago? Do you think it was an accident that turned into a secret, or was there something even darker behind it? Let us know your theory in the comments below. Thank you for watching case number 3. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more mysteries, crimes, and shocking cases. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.